If you've been watching Love is Blind UK season 2, you know that this guy's spleen has become the main character. And the online discourse surrounding this guy and his spleen has been so loud that people have been accusing him of being in a cult, especially considering that his job title in the description of the show says that he is a human design coach. So, what exactly is human design, and is it in fact a cult? Well, today we are unpacking it all and maybe even roasting Patrick a little bit. So sit back, relax, and take a deep breath. It's time to let the fresh air in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name is Erin, and I am fascinated by all things cults, true crime, and unique spiritual practices. I post at least one deep dive every single week on this channel, so if you're into that sort of thing, please consider subscribing. I would absolutely love to have you here. And for everybody, our AC is out in our house, okay? I am so hot. It's been in the 90s all week where I live. Me and my husband have been sleeping in the floor in the basement, and I am filming this bright and early in the morning after opening all of the windows in the house and trying to air the entire place out because these studio lights make things so extremely hot. So, if you see me start sweating and I just start to look swampy by the end of this video, that's why. That's why. Yeah. Yeah. But right now it feels fine. I'm a little glowy, definitely. Um, but I'm just gonna pretend that that was intentional. It's not. It's me getting increasingly hot as time goes on. Anyways, everyone, thank you for being here and dealing with my little neuroses. Let's jump into this video because honestly, I feel like, look, I am a little bit of a reality TV show girly, and it's starting to be very justifiable because I feel like so many reality shows this year have inspired videos on my channel. We've got the Mom Talk Mormon Moms. Now we have Love is Blind. I think I covered something else from a reality show recently, so we're going to jump right in. In January 1987, on the Mediterranean island of Ibiza, a former advertising executive named Robert Allen Krakauer claimed that he was penetrated by a voice from beyond. Yep, he was penetrated. When I first read that quote, I thought it said penetrated by a voice from behind, and I was like, oh, that's a new one. But over 8 feverish days and nights, this mystical encounter produced hundreds of pages of dictated material, a detailed blueprint of a new self knowledge system that he would call human design. Krakauer emerged from this ordeal transformed. He adopted the esoteric moniker Ra Uru Hu, self-proclaimed, and in 1992 published The Human Design System, a book compiling the revelations of the voice. And thus began the strange saga of human design, a new age movement that blends ancient wisdom with modern pseudoscience, and it attracts devoted followers worldwide, even as critics warn of cult like dynamics and hidden dangers. But before he became an oracle for a new paradigm, Ra Uru Hu was known as Robert Allen Krakauer. By all accounts, he had a conventional early career, university educated with a bachelor's degree, and working in publishing and advertising. He was creative and entrepreneurial, and he was also a musician and storyteller, living a life steeped in the arts as well as business. In 1983, this comfortable life took a sharp turn. Krakauer vanished from Canada and embarked on a period of travel and self exile that eventually landed him on Ibiza. And on that small Spanish island, he taught school and lived a modest life until that night he was penetrated and everything changed. He described that he was confronted by an otherworldly voice, an intelligence that was, quote, far superior to anything he had ever experienced. Now, I don't know what you think about when you hear Ibiza, but I think of it as one of the biggest party scenes in the entire world. So all I can think of right now is Homeboy was tripping. This guy was so high and he just thought it was real. He thought it was real. That's what I think. Are you ready to work? The voice asked. And when Krakauer apparently agreed, a flood of information poured through him. He later said that he spent 8 days and nights transcribing the voice's message, ultimately producing a manuscript of roughly 400 pages. This intense download outlined a complex system for understanding human beings, their personalities, their energies, and their destinies based on a synthesis of mystical and what he called scientific traditions. The only witness to this epiphany was reportedly his dog. For Krakauer, the experience was both mind blowing and mind altering. He emerged from the encounter and education with the voice as a changed man. The voice itself had bestowed on him a new name, Uru Hu, and Krakauer prefixed this with Ra. Thus, Ra Uru Hu was born, a name as cryptic and ancient sounding as the system he now carried. In the lore of human design, this origin story is treated with reverence. It was a revelation, not invention. Skeptics, however, have noted how closely it resembles the pattern of other New Age cult leaders who emerged from isolation bearing channeled wisdom. Even Ra himself half joked that what happened could be seen as, quote, the actions of a man in the throes of a schizophrenic breakdown or a particularly powerful acid trip, unquote. Though devotees insist that it was divine inspiration. Okay. Now, in the 2 years following this revelation, Ra Uru Hu began organizing the material delivered by the voice. By 1989, he had written the Rave I Ching, reinterpreting the ancient Chinese oracle that underpins much of human design's logic. Oh, so now we're learning that he probably just stole this ideology from some other culture. Awesome. In 1992, he published the first major text, the often called Black Book, formally introducing the human design system to the world. Ra presented human design not as his personal philosophy, but as a transmission, a revealed teaching that he was merely the messenger for. He often emphasized that human design is not a belief system, urging people not to take his word for it, but to experiment and verify its truths themselves. This framing kind of set human design apart from other overt religions and cults because Ra was disavowing worship and was actually encouraging skepticism. Don't believe me, he even titled one of his essays. But nonetheless, Ra Uru Hu firmly established himself as the central figure, the prophet of human design. Now, over the next 2 decades, he dedicated his life to teaching and disseminating the system across North America, Europe, and beyond. Together with his family, he lived mostly on Ibiza with stints in the US and Germany. And then he founded official institutions to propagate the knowledge. Ra Uru Hu led the movement until his death on March 12, 2011, when he passed away at his home in Ibiza at 62. By then, human design had grown from obscurity into a notable subculture in the New Age and personal development scene. His legacy includes a global network of trained practitioners, an extensive body of lectures and writings, and the ongoing mystique of his persona. The man who vanished as Robert Krakauer and reappeared as Ra Uru Hu left behind a system that many find breathtaking in scope, and others find deeply controversial. At its core, human design purports to be a quote, holistic self knowledge system, a tool to map the innate characteristics of an individual and guide them to live in alignment with their true nature. And just as a quick side note, because I find this very interesting, I had a girls' night one night, and one of them actually brought up human design in conversation, and she had an app. And she was asking what all of our birthdays were so that she could determine like what our human design basically was. And to be honest, there was one thing that resonated with, or actually, there were two things that really resonated with me. And one of these things did give me permission to start operating in my life in a different way. For example, I honestly don't even remember the categorization of what I was, but it basically said that, like, I need a balance between, like, structure and freedom, but if I'm too structured, I don't want to do any work at all. I kinda lose my motivation. So instead, it's better if I have, like, a general picture of, say, my to-do list, and then move from task to task as I am inspired to do it instead of, like, forcing myself to abide by a rigid structure that I set for myself. And when I tell you, just allowing myself to do that, it really did change how I operate, and I've ended up being more productive than when I used to try to be like, okay, from 9 to 10 I'm doing this, from 10:15 to 11:30 I'm doing this. It just felt way too pressurized. So it's allowed me to kind of give myself permission to flow through my days a little bit better. And I can see how people immediately want to get sucked into it, because if you have permission to do something I think that you subconsciously knew about yourself already, you're like, "Oh my gosh, the human design is the secret to my life," when really it's just a tool that you can use to give yourself permission to something that you already might know about yourself. I don't know if that makes any sense. Maybe that was a word salad, but that was just my take. It also told me that I'm a cave person, which means apparently that I need a lot of time by myself in a safe space, which is true. So, I don't know, but there are some very, very, very culty aspects of it. And yes, if you want the app, you do have to pay like $80 for it. So, do not recommend. There is a ton of pseudoscience involved too that we are going to jump into it. But I think it's a classic example of, take what resonates, but don't get too obsessed and too involved in it. Like if you're trusting your spleen over your gut, maybe you need to like take a step back. But Ra Uru Hu described the human design as a science of differentiation, claiming that it can reveal each person's unique genetic and energetic blueprint. To an outsider, a human design chart looks like a mix between an astrological natal chart and a circuit schematic for the soul. And indeed, human design is explicitly syncretic, combining elements from a grab bag of mystical and pseudoscience sources. Western astrology, the Chinese I Ching, the Kabbalah's tree of life, the Hindu chakra system, and even concepts from quantum physics and genetics. So, this result is a dense and esoteric framework, one that can appear breathtaking in scope, as one theologian noted, synthesizing that, quote, seven or more traditions have been brought into a single model. So it's almost like ding, ding, ding. We predicted it. This guy just pulled the things he liked from different practices and said, this is the ultimate one, just like every other cult leader we've ever talked about. Now, calculating the body graph human design begins with birth data, much like astrology. The exact date, time, and place of your birth are used to generate your personal chart. This chart is called the body graph, a central feature of the system. The body graph is a diagram of the human body with a network of lines, centers, and symbols, a kind of energetic wiring diagram that is said to represent your inborn traits and potentials. I think it's really just to try to make this thing look like it's scientifically proven. Like, oh, we have a chart of the body, it makes it look like we know what we're talking about. Key inputs are the positions of the planets at the time of your birth, and distinctively, also roughly 88 days before birth, representing, quote, design versus personality aspects. These planetary positions are mapped onto the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, which in turn correspond to specific gates and pathways in the body graph. It looks almost too complicated to even try to understand. Each chart maps 9 energy centers or geometric shapes. These are all connected by channels or lines. The colored shapes indicate defined centers or consistent energy. The white shapes are open centers or areas of receptivity and conditioning. The numbers correspond to the 64 I Ching hexagrams, which are called gates, which activate specific traits in your personality. At left and right, planetary symbols show which gates were activated at birth, and this makes up your personality. So, roughly 3 months before your birth is your genetic design. So, this combination of defined channels, gate activations, all form a person's unique energetic blueprint. Each person's body graph highlights their defined and undefined energy centers. Human design teaches that there are 9 centers. These are analogous to chakras, but with 2 extra beyond their traditional 7. And these govern different aspects of being. So, for example, you have ajna, the mind or the intellect, your spleen, where your intuition or immune system lies, your solar plexus, which is where your emotions live, your sacral, which is your life force and work energy, etc., etc. Centers colored in are said to be fixed and reliable in that person. Those white centers are areas where one absorbs and amplifies energy from others. So, the configuration of defined centers and the channels connecting them give rise to one's type, strategy, and authority, which are core concepts in human design. Are you guys still with me? I feel like I am trying to give you guys a whole semester long lecture in an hour and 15 minutes. So, human design categorizes people into 4 primary aura types, with a 5th hybrid type often acknowledged. These types are essentially broad roles or energetic archetypes, each with a recommended life strategy. You have your manifestors or initiators, the rarest type. So, everybody wants to be the manifester. Only 9% of people are manifestors. And they're the innovators and the instigators. They have an independent energy and are here to initiate action without waiting. Their strategy is to inform others of their decisions before they act, creating less resistance. Historically, manifestors were seen as leaders, the ones who spark movements and then withdraw to let others carry them out. Yeah. Sounds a little exploitative, in my opinion. It's like the CEO of a company that he's only the ideas man, but he just sits back and dictates everything else that everybody has to do, if that makes sense. Or even like a cult leader. I bet you our boy Rob thought he was a manifester. We also have the generators or the builders, which are the most common type because around 70% of people, including a hybrid subtype called manifesting generators. So, generators are the workforce and the life force of humanity, endowed with sustainable sacral energy. Their strategy is to respond rather than initiate. They wait to respond to stimuli or opportunities that arise externally. According to human design, generators find satisfaction by engaging their energy in response to the right calls, and they experience frustration if they try to force things. I feel like these are just spiritual ways to talk about the workforce, you know, like different rankings within the workforce. And then we have the projectors, the guides, which are 20% of people. Projectors are the advisors and the seers, attuned to others and skilled at guiding energy rather than doing all the doing. Their strategy is to wait for the invitation, meaning they thrive when recognized and invited into roles to guide or lead rather than pushing themselves uninvited. They can become wise managers of others' energies, but suffer bitterness if their guidance is ignored or if they act before being welcomed. Reflectors or observers, they have all their centers completely open and thus reflect the energies of their environment. They're considered the barometers of group health, sensing problems and potentials. Their strategy is to wait a lunar cycle about 28 days before making major decisions due to their changeability. A reflector's life theme is surprise, which is good, or disappointment when life doesn't align. I feel like that just kind of sounds like everyone. Now, each type comes with a signature emotional theme and a not self theme that indicates when one is out of alignment. The goal in human design teachings is to live according to one's type strategy and personal inner authority. Authority refers to the decision making mechanism one is meant to use, and it varies. So, an emotional authority means that one should wait through emotional waves before making a decision. A sacral authority, or a quote, gut response, means immediate yes or no feelings are the guide. We also have the splenic, of course. Can't make this video without mentioning the spleen, which is your intuition. Yeah. I literally don't even know where my spleen is. So if someone was like, trust your spleen, I'd be like, what? Now, by following one strategy and authority, proponents say that life unfolds with far less resistance and greater fulfillment. It's a process of effortless alignment, but only if one deconditions from societal programming, which is considered to be the not self. So you have your self, and then you have the not self. Be careful. Be careful. You don't want to listen to your not self. So, what is the appeal of all of this? Why would such a convoluted system gain popularity? For adherents, the depth is part of the appeal because it almost makes you feel like you're smarter than everybody else. But human design also promises a comprehensive and personalized map of your unique energy and life blueprint, unquote, which sounds profoundly validating in a cookie cutter world. It combines the personal allure of astrology with the analytical veneer of a personality assessment. Many fans report that their first reading leaves them feeling, quote, seen and heard for who they really are, sometimes in almost uncanny detail. As one psychotherapist observed, human design can help shed light on our strengths, challenges, and opportunities for growth. It can give context to patterns and frustrations that people face. It offers a language to explain why you've always felt a certain way and guidance on how to live better by, quote, being yourself. The core message, as human design literature often repeats, is fundamentally love yourself. Moreover, human design markets itself as practical and experiment driven, not faith based. Ra Uru Hu called it the mechanics of our nature, something to test like a scientist rather than worship like a guru's words. He claimed that as more people got charts, statistical evidence mounted that the system's predictions were accurate. It was a bold assertion that was not recognized by any established science, but it was compelling to those on the inside. The system's use of scientific vocabulary like quantum, genetics, neutrinos, and complex schematics lends a very techie credibility for some. It has even been described as a parascientific or trans-religious project. In other words, it straddles the line between science and spirit. And finally, human design taps into a collective hunger for purpose and certainty in uncertain times. The late 2010s and 2020s have seen surges of interest in astrology, Myers-Briggs, enneagrams, and other systems that claim to tell us who we are and what we should be doing, and also how to do it. Human design rolled many of these into one, arriving just as millennials and Gen Z were seeking novel self-exploration tools beyond traditional religion. It's no surprise then that human design has been embraced in wellness circles, coaching programs, and even by certain celebrities. Guess who I'm going to talk about next? Just guess. Guess. You probably guessed Gwyneth Paltrow. Her lifestyle brand Goop, known for flouting pseudoscientific rigor, gave human design a signal boost by featuring it as a tool for self-discovery. As one wellness writer noted, human design isn't much better or worse than astrology, tarot, or any of the other spiritual practices. Increasing numbers of people are tuning in to attempt to find guidance and direction in a world that feels increasingly uncertain and devoid of meaning, unquote. In other words, human design rose on the same cultural side of meaning seeking that has lifted many alternative modalities into mainstream conversation. Yet, alongside the enthusiastic uptick, critics and former insiders warn that there is a shadow side to this feel good system. The very elements that make human design compelling, its complexity, its definitive pronouncements about your nature, its tight knit community of believers, can also render it manipulative, elitist, and potentially harmful if taken to extremes. As we've explored, human design has spread far and wide over the decades. But as it spreads, so do questions and warnings. In quiet corners of Reddit or even in personal blogs, some former devotees share unsettling experiences. They've claimed that behind human design's empowering facade lies a pattern of culty behavior, exploitative practices, and psychological risk. So, is human design a cult? It's a question that even many enthusiasts have heard and grappled with. To be clear, human design doesn't resemble a classic dangerous cult. There's no isolated compound, there's no single charismatic leader demanding absolute obedience, at least not since Ra's passing in 2011. There's no explicit coercion to cut off non believers. Many students dip in and out freely, treating it as a tool rather than a lifestyle. Yet, numerous critics have observed the cult like tendencies in the culture around human design. These include idealization of the founder, a closed circle of, quote, true knowledge, pressure to accept dogma, monetary exploitation, and even apocalyptic rhetoric. A hallmark of cultish groups is a charismatic leader elevated to near superhuman status. Ra Uru Hu, by his own design, tried to avoid deification. He repeatedly said, "Don't idolize me. Don't take me on faith." In fact, he insisted that human design should not be something you surrender to because you trust it. This has given followers a retort to cult claims. It encourages individuals to make decisions for themselves, so it can't be a cult, as one article of Faith goes. However, in practice, Ra Uru Hu was treated as the ultimate authority on the system. He is literally seen as the messenger chosen by the cosmos. His voluminous lectures and writings are cited like scripture in classes. A former student remarked that within official circles, Ra's work is the end-all be-all in human design, unquote, and any deviation or alternative interpretation is dismissed. I think the claim of "Don't take me as a science. Don't take me to my word. Decide for yourself" was only a way for him to try to separate from being called a cult. It's kind of reminding me of Bentinho Massaro. I'll try to remember to drop the video I did on him here, where someone confronts him about being a cult, and he was like, "We are a cult. We're a collection of ultimate lunar types," or whatever the quote was. He basically created a new acronym for the word cult to like simultaneously distance himself from being called a cult, but also try to show that he doesn't try to be a cult leader, even though he has literally caused people to die. But when it comes to human design, another insider who eventually became disillusioned noted, quote, "Human design is comprised of systems that existed long before Ra's spiritual penetration and is somehow gatekept by this white dude and his cult," unquote. I like this guy. I like the guy that said this. This sharp comment highlights the irony that ancient wisdom now had to be filtered through Ra, who was a Westerner who claimed to transcend those traditions, and that his organization acted as that gatekeeper. And indeed, testimonies show that alternative voices were actively suppressed. In an official training, when over half the students said they first learned human design from Karen Curry Parker, a well known teacher outside the official organization, the instructor immediately cut them off. Quote, "We do not know who that is. She isn't certified and is not sharing real human design." Spoiler alert, you can now become a human design coach, which I am assuming is somewhat of an MLM model or one of those scammy life coach non accredited training programs where a 21-year-old tries to make money off of you by being your human design coach. Just dangerous overall. But this class was told that Parker, who actually had trained under Ra years prior, essentially does not exist to them. The same thing happened when someone mentioned following the teachings of Kip Winsett, an early adopter who co authored some of the materials. The response was, "He's a fraud. He's not one of us." I mean, this behavior is textbook cult, delegitimizing all outside authority and monopolizing the quote, truth. It echoes the us versus them mentality where only the inner circle holds the real keys, and outsiders, even those with deep knowledge, are totally shunned. Furthermore, Ra Uru Hu's carefully crafted persona, complete with that new name of his, implies perhaps that sun gate of God, as some interpret Ra and the mystical sound Uru Hu to actually mean, can be seen as a self stylization fitting a guru archetype. As one Reddit critic put it, quote, "He changed his name to sound like some sort of mystical being. Check your cult bingo cards," unquote. That writer argued that Ra played a clever game. He said, "Don't worship me," while disseminating a grandiose cosmology that only he had access to. He played the innocent and gave people the illusion that they're not swayed by him when, again, people are trying to live according to what this one person said, unquote. In other words, you can end up following someone's teachings to the letter, all while believing that you're an independent experimenter. It's a sort of soft cult dynamic. Even Ra's own family background and psychological profile come into question. While we don't have any evidence of pathological intent, some familiar with cult patterns point out how charismatic leaders often possess strong narcissistic traits. Ra's self presentation as the sole conduit of a superior intelligence and his later proclamations about global mutations and salvation through design certainly placed him on a pedestal in the community. Within human design circles, stories about Ra abound, painting him as a genius, a truth teller, even a cosmic prankster. He passed away in 2011, but veteran members still quote him as if he were a prophet. The phenomenon of posthumous reverence is noted by observers. Quote, "People get enamored by the founder, but that by itself cannot prove that he's the leader of a cult." In short, Ra's legacy within the community looms large. He's idolized. And that dynamic has at times enabled dogmatism and abuse of authority by those claiming to speak in his name. Beyond the founder, another cult like feature is the promise of special hidden knowledge that elevates insiders. Human design positions itself as esoteric. Early materials even had a mystical flair. The first textbook was black covered and nicknamed the Black Book, as if containing arcane secrets. Only those who study deeply, often paying for courses, can fully grasp the system. As one forum poster Riley observed, quote, "A funny thing happens when you share knowledge. You can no longer control it. And this is why I took a lot of classes on HD, but refused to commit to the official organization," unquote. She recounted that the organization tried to whip her into officially joining, warning that you'll never be able to call yourself a certified reader if you don't commit to us and our way of interpreting HD, unquote. To her, that sounded like controlling and brainwashing. The insistence on certification and single correct interpretation suggests human design's upper echelons operate like a priesthood guarding mysteries. In fact, several critics liken the structure to a soft MLM, if not a full blown cult, because there is a continual upsell. Once you're hooked by a free chart, you're enticed to pay for deeper readings, then classes, then analyst training, and each level unveils new levels of the cosmic onion. Quote, everything human design is trapped behind a paywall, and a rather expensive one at that, unquote. There was debate in a Reddit thread, with some defending the charges as fair exchange for experts' time, and others noting ironically that Ra said people really only make money through the not self, right? And it's true. Ra often warned that chasing money is a sign of the conditioned not self. Yet his own enterprise certainly made money from spreading this knowledge. So, which is it, friendo? Expensive paywalls and information control are red flags. One early adopter, Shaitanyo, who was among the first trained by Ra in the 90s, eventually broke away and publicly stated, I think human design has become a cult, and I cannot recommend that you subject yourself to anything that emanates from the official corner, no matter how alluring it sounds. That's a pretty big statement. He and his partner, the late Zeno, another one of Ra's early colleagues, founded Zen Human Design, an alternative school because they, quote, very much disagreed with how the official human design evolved from the late 90s on. In their view, the official organization became increasingly dogmatic and profit driven. They lament that the educational curriculum seems dogmatic and knowledge is hidden behind expensive paywalls. Regular users notice it too. One Reddit post titled HD is a soft cult argued that even if Ross said he didn't want followers, quote, the way people support the argument that HD isn't a cult points to the manipulation. People continue to use his system and some even act cult-like, and that is the point, to use the system in itself a success for someone who wants a cult, unquote. They pointed out that adherents often never question the system, forgetting that it's a mashup of already existing systems. It's just a remix of spiritual ideologies that were revealed to him. This was a really smart Reddit user. If you're watching this, say hi in the comments. A vivid example of the insularity is how some devotees come to reject all other modalities. Pragya Benewal observed that many people, myself included, ditch all other practices we were into before human design, whether it be yoga, meditation, or even traditional therapy, yikes, because they no longer fit into our worldview alongside human design. Major, massive red flags. In some circles, followers might discourage each other from meditating or seeking therapy, implying that you don't need that once you just follow your design. And indeed, commenters on the HD subreddit noted hearing things like, quote, no one needs therapy once they accept their mechanics, or thinking critically is just mind stuff. Mind stuff. Okay. Obviously, this is deeply concerning because it steers people away from proven mental health support and towards a closed logic where human design is the answer to everything. Just go to therapy. I don't know why people demonize therapy so much, but therapists have a passion for helping people. Most therapists, anyways. I know there's sometimes a rotten apple in the bunch, but I mean, come on. Why are we demonizing therapy? Now, one reason people get so deeply involved in HD is the powerful sense of community and belonging that can come early on. Cult specialists note that love bombing is a common recruitment tactic, and in the human design world, this can happen organically. Imagine someone who has always felt different or struggled to find purpose. They get a human design reading and are told, for example, you're a projector. That's why you felt unseen. But you have this special gift, and here's your unique role in the cosmic plan. It makes people who don't feel special, special. The relief and euphoria can be immense. Online, newbies exclaim how finally I feel like I found my tribe, people who speak my language. And early on, the community often does shower newcomers with that vibe of, I finally belong. And because of this, participants report investing heavily, both emotionally and financially, because at first it felt so life changing and supportive. Over time, the language of empowerment and human design can flip into a rigid dogma. The very notion that every decision should be made not just by rational thought, but by following one's inner authority, like following your spleen, can lead adherents to second guess all normal decision making. One critic quipped that it's like people asking, can I initiate in this situation? Am I waiting correctly? It seems like those people who refuse to do things because Mercury is in retrograde, which low key, I'm kind of one of those people. The shadow period of this Mercury retrograde has been kicking my ass, y'all. The point is that some individuals become paralyzed or overly differential to the system's rules, losing personal agency. And instead of using it as one data point, they hand over the keys to human design's formula. Everybody wants a mystical sky daddy speaking through a mystical earth daddy, wrote one frustrated observer, meaning that people look for an external authority to tell them exactly what to do. People are not looking to be liberated into being themselves. They're looking to be freed from the pressure of individuation. In a paradox, a system designed, pun intended, to foster individuality can become just another set of shackles if taken as gospel. A former enthusiast reflected, I feel like 88% of people who engage with any system wield it against themselves and their own individuality, not just human design, unquote. She observed that many HD forums and groups were dominated by dogmatic individuals who turn a system intended for individuation into a practice of strict adherence to an external source of information, unquote. In her view, human design itself isn't inherently dogmatic, but the community often is. And this could be a crucial distinction. But there are, of course, more moderate voices. Some teachers emphasize remembering who you already are and caution against using the chart as an excuse or a crutch. But others, especially some second generation teachers who maybe enjoy the guru role, can be quite authoritarian in style. The potential harm here is psychological. Individuals might start distrusting their own common sense. For example, a generator might stay in a stagnant situation thinking that they must wait to respond rather than proactively change their life. A projector might refrain from pursuing opportunities while anxiously waiting for that formal invitation. A manifester might bulldoze others and excuse it as, well, I'm an initiator, deal with it. This was seen in one Reddit story where a person said that their manifester acquaintance used HD as an excuse to be a lazy narcissist with a messiah complex. That acquaintance apparently justified selfish behavior because their design said that they are a natural leader who shouldn't be bothered with others' expectations, a kind of spiritualized narcissism that HD's framework could empower if misused. Another commenter agreed and said, yes, it's used to excuse shitty behavior, highlighting that some latch on to type descriptions to rationalize faults. This parallels how astrology or other typologies can be abused, like, I'm a Scorpio, deal with it. But with HD, the risk is heightened by the system's complexity and authoritative tone. Some ex members have compared certain devoted HD groups to high control religions, albeit without the overt religious iconography. The belief in the system's infallibility can approach a quasi spiritual conviction. Quote, human design is not for sheep. It's not a religion, Ra would say, but simultaneously, he would proclaim it to be a concrete map of your genetic code and the ultimate tool for awakening. If you truly accept that, it becomes hard to not treat the human design chart as your Bible of self. Theologian J.R. Hustwit noted that human design is trans-religious in scope, implying that it functions like a belief system spanning many religious concepts. And indeed, many followers exhibit belief-like behavior. They trust the system's pronouncements about them more than they trust friends, family, or any outside feedback, or maybe even themselves. They might start to use friends, families, loved ones as just not awake or not on my frequency, and socially isolate themselves into the HD bubble. And I think we actually saw this on Love is Blind. Patrick is speaking blindly to a very sweet woman, and she starts getting vulnerable with him and talking about how she likes to stay humble. And he's like, that's low vibrational. I don't believe in being humble. And she started feeling shame for trying to be humble about her talents as a singer. Instead of empowering her to use her voice, he put her down even more in a vulnerable moment because it was lowering his vibration to hear that she wanted to stay humble. And in the words of the great Kendrick Lamar, I think we all need to stay humble. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm literally starting to sweat. I'm so sorry. But anyways, we've touched on paywalls and courses, but it's worth examining the financial dimension more closely. Cults often exploit members financially through tithes, donations, or other required purchases. Human design isn't a single organization demanding tithes, but the ecosystem can certainly soak up your money. A full analyst training can run many thousands of dollars over years. Regular workshops might be a few hundred each. Readings from established professionals often range from $100 to $300. Some charge even more for in-depth sessions. Then there are ever more advanced materials. You have the soul psychology offshoots, secondary systems like the dream rave, or OC16, an application for group dynamics, each potentially another paid class or lecture series. Critics argue that this creates a dependency and upsell cycle. One never feels like they're done because human design's depth is nearly endless, and there's always another product to buy for further insight into yourself. And regardless of the intention, the financial barrier means that human design often attracts a somewhat privileged audience, those with the disposable income to spend on self discovery. It can also create a class system within the community. The haves who took all the official courses, and the have nots making do with secondhand info. It's a pay to pay business model with an MLM like structure that only makes you feel like you've never done enough and you'll never be able to fully understand yourself if you don't keep paying for these courses and readings. One of the more startling aspects of Ra Uru Hu's later teachings, not always known to casual users, is the presence of future prophecies and a quasi-apocalyptic tone. In particular, Ra frequently spoke of the year 2027 as a major turning point, the end of the current world age, or the cross of planning cycle, and the beginning of a new era where the so-called rave children would start to be born. These rave children, according to him, would be a new species of human with radically different consciousness, possibly hive-like and inhabiting advanced forms of AI or group bodies. And if that sounds outlandish, it is. Even many in the HD community are unsure what to make of it. Ra framed it as science fiction in some lectures, but simultaneously a serious prediction in others. It was supposed to be meant for parents, a warning and a call for preparation. He suggested that certain humans alive now carry a genetic mutation, notably those with a 6-3 profile born around 2027, that would enable this new species to come through. So, how does this veer into cult like territory? Apocalyptic or utopian prophecies often serve to instill urgency and dependence. Ra's prophecy implies that human design is crucial for survival and transition. He allegedly said that as we near 2027 and beyond, those living their design would fare better, while those clinging to the old ways would suffer. In one dramatic line, Ra purportedly claimed, quote, "Everyone who isn't living according to their design by 2060 will die," all caps, DIE. Even if you don't take the prophecy literally, it functions to elevate the stakes of following human design. It's no longer just about a better life, it's about being on the right side of evolution or even surviving a cataclysm. Many cults use end of world predictions to keep members in line. Think of groups like Heaven's Gate or various apocalyptic sects. Human Design's 2027 prophecy is much less immediate and concrete, but it does generate a narrative of we have the knowledge of what's coming and the rest of the world is asleep. This reinforces the us versus them mentality, where devotees feel like they're the enlightened, preparing for a new world, and non followers are sadly doomed by their ignorance. The presence of this element in HD teachings, rarely advertised to newcomers, has raised some eyebrows. And hopefully it raises yours too. While not as salacious as cult rhetoric, it's important to mention that human design's scientific claims are unfounded, and this poses a more subtle danger. The system liberally references genetics, neutrinos, quantum physics, etc. to try to sound credible, but there's no empirical evidence that your birth date or time imprints you with a genetic code of personality via planetary positions. This is, frankly, pseudoscience. When a follower hears this, someone might decide to stop taking their anxiety medication because their chart reading said that they have a quote undefined solar plexus, meaning that they feel others' emotions, not their own anxiety. It's a misinterpretation that could be very, very dangerous to some individuals. Or a projector might decline a promotion because, quote, their strategy is to wait, and that could harm their career. And these, of course, are all hypothetical, but they're plausible scenarios seen with any deterministic system. And human design's aura of scientific legitimacy can give false confidence to people. The mental health angle is worth noting. Some critics worry that for people with certain psychological issues like identity disturbance, anxiety, or a need for external guidance, human design can become an unhealthy obsession or crutch. It provides absolute answers. You are X type, therefore you must do Y, where real life is nuanced. If someone becomes overly reliant on HD to make choices, they could be avoiding personal growth or responsibility, or even exacerbating their anxiety. Am I following my strategy correctly? What if my not self is making this decision? It's dangerous and it kind of strips you of your own mental autonomy. So, while human design has genuine value for some as a self reflective tool, the culture around it exhibits enough cult like and dangerous aspects to warrant caution. Now, maybe you're like myself and you've experienced some aspects of human design and you feel like it gave you permission to operate in a new way in your life. And maybe it has helped you. But just like with any cult, there's always something good that draws people in. So I would just encourage you to really analyze things and not overcommit emotionally or financially or mentally into any of these practices. Do your research, be skeptical. And in the end, the slogan often quoted by Ra Uru himself might be the most liberating stance to take. Don't believe me. Don't believe human design blindly either. Keep what's useful, discard what's not. Your life is the ultimate authority, not a book, not a chart, not a guru. You're more than your design. And life will always exceed a 9-centered diagram with some lines and numbers. In a life full of tools and teachings, we need to not make any one into a totalizing truth. So take human design for what it is, a provocative, creative framework with a mix of insight and illusion. Enjoy the experiment, but don't drink it up too much. And in the grand design of all things, your own critical awareness is the key to your life. Use it. Like I always say, stay safe out there, ask questions, and always stay skeptical. Please let me know what you thought about this video. Have you used human design or not? Do you agree that it's cult-like, or do you think that's a little bit extreme? And also, are you watching Love is Blind this season? If there's another reality show that features a cult, let me know down in the comments because maybe we make this a little niche. I don't understand why so many reality shows are giving a platform to dangerous organizations. It's kind of mind blowing. So, in an effort to protect the masses and educate them as well, I suppose, maybe this does become a niche. Anyways, you guys, thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. I need to go drink some ice water because your girl's looking like a swamp witch. Anyways, guys, thanks so much. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.